So in revenge for the terrible leftists making fun of our dearly departed Queen, now we're going to mock the delusional Democrats and them entering some kind of downfall ahead of the midterms, because there's a lot of coping and seething in the mainstream media and none of it's really warranted. Biden's just a rampant embarrassment. Speaking of the alternative, you can go to lotuseaters.com and watch Carl's video, It Must Be Trump, saying that the Great Orange Hope must ride back over the hill and complete his narrative arc. It's a brilliantly edited video. The music's fantastic. And it even got a mention by Tim Pool 40 minutes into Timcast 607 when he had Robert Davies, the director of the new film My Son Hunter, with Lawrence Fox and Gina Carano.
Yeah, I haven't seen
He
that.
was on and he said Robert should go watch it. So I'm looking forward to watching that film because it actually looks quite funny. Lawrence Fox is apparently a method actor standing around in his underwear smoking cigarettes, so should be a good laugh. So we'll move over to topsy-turvy land, shall we? Here's an article from Axios. Biden's lucky streak. You think it's going particularly well for dementia-ridden old Joe?
Well, the funniest thing I saw this week was a CNN thing about Biden's success, and then on the same screen is like inflation. And I think the headline was like inflation is down, and then it's on the thing at the stock market or something, and it just tanking.
All in the red, yeah.
Yeah, it was so funny.
This is just some of the stuff they put in here is insane. President Biden and Democrats have ridden a wave of good news all summer. In what bubble? On an improving economy, big legislative wins, and even unlikely gains by Ukraine. Now, not to be pessimistic, but it doesn't look like Ukraine's winning, especially if you back Vladimir Putin into a corner and he's just going to press the big red button. Also, legislative wins, they're talking about the Inflation Reduction Act, the one that's spending mass amounts of billions on climate initiatives, which will not work and will immiserate the country. And improving economy, as you said, the stock market's in a hell of a state and inflation is awful. All they've done is redefine the word recession to try and get themselves out of one.
Oh, they're asking you to this is what we're saying. Believe what we say, not what you see, not what's happening. The fact that you can't buy an electric car if you've got 60 grand. Now you can't charge it because we can't. We've turned your power off on the grid. Could get a diesel generator and plug your car into that, which will create even more pollution. I mean, I think I'm watching it, and I think, are people not like? Surely you can see that this is one of the hope. The man's shaking air. He's shaking hands with thin air. He's shaking hands with thin air. It's like he's objectively useless since he's come in. And I wouldn't mind if he was just useless and he was useless in America. Fine.
Yeah.
But he's so useless that we're paying more in our petrol. He's so useless that I'm paying more in my electricity because this idiot can't deal with his own business because these people want to, we got to net zero this and that. Mind your own business.
Yeah,
you talk about imperialism, stays your own thing. That's actually why Trump was good, because he was America first.
Exactly. And also, the fact that he was America first meant that he repatriated fracking and oil production. He became they became energy independent for the first time since Nixon set the target in the 60s. Coinciding with that, because he brought emissions down by using fracking, they were the country from 2017 to 2019 that had the biggest amount in reductions of emissions, even though they said, he's a climate denier, he's cutting out the Paris Accords. So if Trump was still in office, if the 2020 election would have gone differently, shall we say, for YouTube, then we could have been buying oil from America right now and had cheap gas. But unfortunately, Joe Biden, day one, decommissioned the Keystone XL pipeline, which would have been operational by now. And then if you look at the graphs, and I covered this for the American Spectator a little while ago, it goes up, up, up for Trump, hits Joe Biden's first day in office, and oil production plummets. And that's the reason. It's Biden administration policy. The rest of the world is worse off. So then they also say, between the lines, Republicans' self-inflicted troubles have helped Democrats as well. Self-inflicted such as Republican money troubles are compounded by Trump hoarding $100 million in his Save America PAC. They're talking about him like he's Smaug from The Hobbit, rather than just getting funding because he's obviously the most popular candidate and Republicans like him. I think it's like 70% would say they'd vote for Trump if he was in the primary. So he's the de facto nominee. That's why they're trying to character assassinate him and take him out of the race with the FBI. So let's go back to reality, shall we? Instead, let's check Joe Biden's job approval rating with Real Clear Politics Aggregate. So it turns out he's got a 53 disapproval rating and about a 10% margin lead in that direction. Compared to Trump on the same day, 2 years into their presidency, Trump had a 9.4% margin in favour of the exact same disapproval rating. So Trump was actually more popular and less divisive than Joe Biden. So when he turns around and says, the great MAGA king, dark MAGA, Trump was ruining America. Trump was not the murderer of American cohesion. He might have been the coroner and pronounced it dead on the scene, but the Democrats have been waging this war against the American people for a very long time before that. And it was set in motion, as you said, by American imperialism. I don't think the Patriot Act was all that great for cohesion. No. Spying on your own citizens and saying, if you've got nothing to hide, you've got nothing to fear. Well, clearly not. not exactly great for civil rights, was it? Biden's disapproval was probably because of stunts like this. I'm sure you saw this famous image, which...
Oh, I saw this. I genuinely couldn't believe when I saw that it wasn't Photoshopped.
Yeah.
That they... Listen, whether you're religious, for me, that looks like the devil or something.
It looks
right?
like he's summoning Baphomet to devour his political opponents.
Moloch. He's this is like the most Nazi image propaganda, stormtroopers behind him. And the funniest thing is then, like, whether you're... Surely you see that. Then you see, like, left journalists going, oh, this is such a, like, oh, what's he always has state troopers there or whatever, the Marine Guards, and then he's like, this is just an image. If it had been Trump, it'd be if that had been a picture of Donald Trump, the whole of them would have gone into meltdown. There'd be car crashes on the street.
Well, whoever's in charge of the optics as well clearly didn't see Back to the Future 2, because it looks like the clock tower he's in front of is the Biff nightmare future where he builds the casino. Just why would you position yourself as the villain? You genuinely like Emperor
know what
Palpatine.
it is? I genuinely think right now, just the feeling I'm getting, that they want this. The fact that they're saying, "Oh, MAGA Republicans are the baddies," is such a cunning thing, because if you start labeling MAGA Republicans, that's the other party, right? Then you can't. Then it's a one party thing, and then this guy suddenly, like, it's kind of dictatorial. Like the way, if this had been if this had been Iran and this had been Iranian things, this election is kind of crazy. Like, we need to take a look at this. If these posts become votes coming in at night, one party saying the other party, like, can't be voted for, they're a threat to the democracy, and we're gonna monitor this. We're gonna send the FBI, or we're gonna send the secret police into their headquarters. You think, wow, those guys are like, they're the baddies. And then they're all like, oh, I think we're the goodies. I think this is the optics of Big Brother is watching you, goody. I mean, he looks so divisive. And then the funny thing is, the next day, he went straight face to the camera like, well, I didn't say those things.
Oh, no, yeah. Yeah, that's why Carl called him Dr. Joe and Mr. Biden. He's just taking a serum and busting out of his clothes, and he's this sort of gangrenous creature.
They doped him up that night, gave him some
Uppers.
meth, and
He's scrounging around. Hey Hunter, you got any crack left? See, but for me that screams insecurity, because I think they just know they're barely clinging on, and so they're trying to do too much of a show of strength, and they're overplaying their hand. And I think some of their responses to this soon is revelatory of they know they're going to lose, so they're going to do their damnedest to ensure that the narrative is scaring enough of the American people to try and scare people into thinking that voting Trump is untenable.
Yeah, well, that's what they're doing. So by saying, if you vote for Trump, then you're 100% you're a racist. That's what you can't get a job if you vote, because being labelled a racist is the worst thing you could be labelled, right? Or maybe transphobic.
Other than
now,
paedophile.
Yeah. I
But
don't know about paedophilia.
Actually, yeah, true,
I don't know that. But it being labelled as then you're like, oh, I'm watching your job. So it scares people into not voting for that way. And then they're trying to galvanize their support with the abortion issue that came up. Then they're like, oh, if you don't vote for us, then this will happen. So they're galvanizing their support, and they're demonizing Republicans. And they've done it in a smart way. They say, it's only MAGA Republicans. They're all MAGA Republicans.
74 million Americans, at least.
Yeah, all of them, anyway.
Yeah. So funny you raised the abortion issue. This is what the Republicans are doing in response. So Senator Lindsey Graham responded to this image, this terrible speech, with all due respect, Mr. President, there's nothing wrong with America's soul. The American people are hurting because of your policies. Rampant inflation, out of control crime, terrorism on the rise, broken borders. Stop lecturing and change your policies before it's too late. Now, obviously, Lindsey Graham, I don't know how much you know about this guy. He was very full-throated in his defense of Brett Kavanaugh when he was being put for that show trial. And then as soon as the Democrats win, he's high-fiving Kamala Harris in the Senate. And so people were going, well, either you're a do-nothing or you're a traitor. But now it seems like Lindsey Graham is maybe doing something after all. Because the Republicans, if we go to the next one, John, are seeking to impose a federal abortion ban after Roe v. Wade. 15 weeks, up to 15 weeks of pregnancy. So they're having a mandatory cutoff point, and it's called the Pain-Capable Unborn Child Protection Act. So it bans abortions up until the point where children have a central nervous system and can be detected resisting abortion equipment, which people like I'm forgetting her name, but she's originally a Planned Parenthood nurse, and she quit the industry because she was watching an ultrasound, and she watched the baby writhe away from the abortion instruments and went, okay, I'm going to go and campaign against this now. This is based on a similar premise. Now, of course, if you're anti-abortion, you're going to turn around and say, well, any abortion at any stage is on principle wrong. So this is just, even though you're trying to slowly walk to an abortion ban, there's still going to be babies dead in the interim. But this seems to be, for the first time, the Republicans willing to actually wield a bit of power and influence in the culture and try and push an issue forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think, isn't that like the standard cutoff? Like in Europe, it's 15 weeks as well.
Yeah, so it wouldn't be outside the norm. Here it's 24, which is, again, very late along.
Okay. I mean, I think, they're definitely, abortion's a polemical situation. I've got my moral views on abortion, but then you've got the reality.
Yeah.
So, but having said that, I mean, abortion should always be the last resort. But I mean, 24, how long is I mean, I don't know enough about pregnancy, but how long is a pregnancy? Like 36 weeks or something?
40.
40 weeks. It's like, listen,
so that's 24 weeks, 6 months along.
Yeah, 6 months in. Come on, that's two. That's a basic. That's a baby that you can't even argue with that. So there should be a cutoff. It's not for me to tell other people what to do, but they've gone through with it, and I think I was under the impression it was 15 weeks in Europe which
Depends
was the
on the
cutoff.
country.
And it brings it in line with that, and they're arguing like some of the things are so crazy what they were arguing with. I think it was Virginia, and they were saying you could leave the baby and just leave it to die and it's like that's evil.
That's been voted on the Senate, by the way. So the Democrat senators voted down the Born Alive Protection Act, and that meant that babies survived abortions would have to be given mandatory medical care by a doctor, and they voted that down. So now it is legal, and it's happened in Minnesota in multiple cases. I think about 6 babies have survived abortions, just been left on operating tables.
That is actually, yeah, that's actually there's no. How can you defend that?
Yeah.
Ethically, morally, how can you defend that? So that's disgusting.
Yeah. So Indiana has become the only state, actually, it's in this article still, that has imposed a near total abortion ban, except in the cases of rape, incest, fetal abnormality, or serious risk to life and health of the mother. Obviously, there's some wiggle room there that you can argue with, especially Josh and I spoke about this sort of stuff when we covered our morality of abortion video. We had a pretty congenial debate on that, so I advise you go and watch that to find where you line up on lotuseaters.com. They're currently having an Indiana judge hearing lawsuits brought by abortion providers against that bill in 4 days' time, so we'll see how that one pans out. But it'll be an interesting constitutional test case as to whether the Republicans can actually get this done. So if the Republicans are also taking suggestions on what they should do, should they win the midterms, here's something that the American public, I'm sure you and I, would definitely push for. Congressional bans on selling and trading stocks.
100%.
So the New York Times have done a deep dive into a cross-party group of people who have been selling and trading stocks based on their insider information they get from congressional committees. So from 2019 to 2021, 183 current senators or representatives reported a trade of a stock or another financial asset by themselves or an immediate family member. More than half of them sat on congressional committees that gave them insight into the companies whose shares they reported buying or selling. Over a 3-year period, 97 lawmakers or their family members bought or sold assets in over 3,700 trades in industries affected by their committee work. The 3,700 trades amounted to more than 10% of the transactions by Congress, and the 97 members who were flagged by the Times were more than half of the people who reported trades, nearly a fifth of Congress, and equally split between Republicans and Democrats. It's just a staggering amount. So, have you heard about Nancy Pelosi's husband?
Hey, baby, actually, I'm against this, right? I think we should keep it as it is because I follow Nancy Pelosi, stock picker on Twitter, and it's currently my pension plan. Just anything she buys, I buy. Nvidia, I'm all about that. You just tell me, Nancy, and I'll buy it because, listen, she's the greatest investor since Warren Buffett, and I respect her for her investing acumen and knowledge. I think Nvidia with their new chip, which is going to power the latest, greatest PCs and Radeon processors, that's the one.
I can see into the future.
It's
but she's denying she's actually done any trading at all.
Man, her salary's like $200,000 a year. She's got a net wealth of like $50 million or more.
$1 million quid freezer full of ice cream.
Yeah. How's that happen? Come on now. That is disgusting. And the thing, you know what's really annoying? They get away with it. Yet when you get on some like like wannabe trader at home. He's just doing his own thing on Wall Street bets, and he does it right, and he follows it, and then they're gonna lose. Suddenly they pull the plugs. You can't buy any more of that stock. You can't buy any more of that, and they pull that. So the game's rigged. Everyone knows the game's rigged, but this is just at least try and hide that the game is rigged. They don't.
Have you seen the 87,000 IRS agents that have been hired and armed?
They say they need guns.
People? Yeah.
Pay your taxes.
Exactly. Well, they did a training scenario on camera, and the training scenario wasn't breaking into Jeff Bezos' office or any congressman. It was a small business owner who'd forgot to put down that he'd bought a lawnmower for his business on his taxes, and they just busted in and arrested him. So it's not that they're going after Pelosi, it's they're coming after you and me.
Of course. Listen,
our counterparts in the States, of course.
Yeah, well, that's a joke. So that's like say, invade the Cayman Islands. Have we all forgotten about the Panama Papers?
Yep.
Like everyone's like,
we can't discuss that because of President Zelensky being completely upstanding and transparent and a bastion of democracy.
Listen, comedy pays well. He was a billionaire before. I'll tell you that, baby. A billionaire before he even made it into.
Yeah, you got a limo here. So
I got the limo here and my private jet all the way from.
Yeah, when are you taking over from Liz Truss?
All the way from Reading to here.
So apparently, the 97 members of the New York Times that they analysed did not include Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The reason was her disclosure filings were not flagged because she doesn't sit on any legislative committees. She's just a Speaker of the House and speaks to literally everyone, but she doesn't have any kind of privy information at all. Her husband, Paul Pelosi, is a real estate and technology investor who reported buying and selling between $25 million and $81 million worth of stocks and other financial assets between 2019 and 2021.
Read that again. How much?
Between $25 million and $81 million worth of stocks.
I like the way they say it so nonchalantly that the figures just roll off you like 25 million.
Or 81. Higher and lower, we're going to play.
But it just... If you're an American reading that,
Yeah.
you can't afford to put petrol in your car. You can't... And her husband's just 25 to 81 million. That's no big deal. Well, it's just... Everyone does that. So it's like, what's the problem?
No privy information there at all.
No. Why don't you do it? Why are you being so lazy? Why don't you do 25 to 85 million dollars worth of trading?
Just get a second job.
Yeah.
So there's a quote here. In the absence of restrictions, Mr. Pelosi's transaction alone have spawned a cottage industry of social media accounts and trade tracking services to help investors emulate his market moves because he's just such a sage. Often accompanied by scathing commentary about his wife's potential conflicts of interest. The speaker does not own any stocks, a spokesman for Miss Pelosi said, adding that she has no prior knowledge or subsequent involvement in any transactions. What a load of nonsense. It just so happens that most of the stocks listed in this report and in prior reports about when stocks were dumped during COVID or right before Ukraine involved defense contractors, pharmaceutical companies, environmental technology companies that they're legislating around, and social media companies which are given impunity to suppress information that might be otherwise disadvantageous to President Biden. How convenient.
That sounds like suspiciously like a conspiracy theory. We can't advocate. We can never possibly say that.
Definitely not.
Just allegedly.
Yeah. So this is why, if the Republicans want to win, a Morning Consult poll in January showed that almost 2/3 of respondents across parties would like to see a ban on members of Congress trading, and actually many Congress people themselves have pushed for this. But shockingly, it hasn't gotten through because not just Democrats holding the House, but the Uniparty. So I advise the Republicans to clear out their base of anyone who would have done things like vote for American imperialism, as you so rightly said.
They should. If you were an actual politician who cared about the country, they should do it for. You can't take on like sponsors from other people. You can't take. You only earn your salary. That's it.
Yeah.
And that's actually why Trump, they don't like Trump. He didn't need the money.
He donated it.
Yeah, he didn't need it. Didn't need the money.
And some other Republican Congress people who are actually doing that. There's someone on Tim Pool's show the other day who's doing the same thing. So God bless you. So an incentive to perhaps double down for the Republicans might be that CNN becomes their new press arm. In a twist of fate. Some crying from The Guardian here. CNN becomes right-wing? The new objective CNN appears to be making itself objectively right-wing. Because reality has a conservative bias, it seems. Now, it's a pretty delusional article, but we kind of wish it was true. But I'll read some of it. CNN wants to be the new Fox News, and it's not even trying to hide it. Earlier this year, Chris Licht became the new CEO of the cable news network, and made it clear he was going to change the network's direction. One of Licht's first moves was to embark on what Axios described as Capitol Hill diplomacy tour, and others described it as a Republican bootlicking tour. Licht met with lawmakers who had become wary of cable news and promised them that CNN was moving away from alarmist programming towards more neutral, objective reporting. What does that mean in practice? Well, it means firing anyone who's critical of Donald Trump or Republicans. please. After purging progressive voices, and that includes Brian Stelter, Chris Cuomo, etc., Licht has made his first big hire, announcing on Tuesday that John Miller would be going on CNN as the network's chief law enforcement and intelligence analyst. The new analyst is a former New York Police Department Deputy Commissioner of Intelligence and Counterterrorism. Apparently he's a polarizing figure because he made headlines in March when he testified to New York City Council that the NYPD did not, in his opinion, inappropriately spy on disproportionately Muslim members of the September 11 attacks. Muslims after September 11 attacks, sorry. So, of course, they wouldn't spy on people that were involved in the attacks, but he's saying, oh, we didn't disproportionately spy on Muslims. No, the Patriot Act was bad, of course. But they're saying somehow that, as well, the Patriot Act is aligned with Trump? No? Wouldn't advise that.
Who knows? The Guardian's hard to...
Yeah, it's just psychobabble. It's just nuts. So they're now saying that CNN's going to hire Trump? That's genuinely something they're trying to predict?
You know what's funny? I mean, this article kind of encapsulates everything for me that is wrong with the left today. Because you're not going to like this. I'm a Labour member, right? Well, I'm not anymore, but I am a Labour member. I vote Labour, right? I believe in left. I don't think my politics have changed. I've always been I'm probably centre. I'm central, right. A little bit to the left, right? But I'm open I'll listen to arguments from both sides, make up my own mind, choose that, right? The opening in their sub-headline or their headline says they're going to be neutral, right? That means in the middle.
Yeah. Even
being neutral in the middle now, or even being just a little bit to the left, for them, that's far right. It's like, it's not, they think if you're not aligned with absolutely everything, abortion after the baby's been born, this, that, and the other, then they think you're far right. And the fact that they think, listen, Chris Stelter got fired because CNN's been, all of that's happened at CNN. Actually now, finally, not because it's because the ratings are going through the floor, they're rubbish, and no one wants to watch CNN because it's so boring and so obviously biased that people have had enough, they can't listen to it, and they realize we need to be neutral. But most people, I think, you get some people who are extreme left, some people are extreme right. Most people are down the middle on most things. They just want to have a nice life, have a comfortable community, a safe community, bring their kids up right. They don't want to be indoctrinated by your religion, my religion. They want to be able to bring up their own family the way they see fit.
The politics of leave me alone.
Exactly, leave me alone. But they don't like us. Even at the fact that they're saying, listen, we're not right. We're just neutral. We're going to play it fair to both sides. Playing it fair. They can't have a fair game, because the thing is, if you explain to the general member of the public something. Down the line, if you said to the general public, what do you think about abortion? I think you should have it. What do you think about abortion after the baby's been born? They'd be like, what, are you mad? Every single person would say that. And they can't have that, but that's what they want, but they can't let you, which is why libs of TikTok, they're going out of their way to ban it. All she does is she posts what they say, and she amplifies it, so real people get to see what they're actually saying. And when people see their actual message, they think,
it's intolerable.
It's what the hell? And I've not changed where I am. I still think, okay, we need a fairer society, this, that, and the other. But I can't be like, I think, you know what, we should have drag queens fucking lap dancing for kids. No, that's not on. Meanwhile, it's just crazy. So they don't like to have their message shown in like the sunlight exposes everything, right? And they can't have it exposed, because when it's exposed, even the most people who thought, I was on that side, like, whoa, maybe I don't want to be associated with that.
Yeah.
So
even former CNN hosts seem to be catching wind of this. We go to the next one. Chris Cuomo has criticised the Democrats who, quote, demonise the Trump voters. Now, he's talking purely in the language of political expediency here, but it is quite a salient point. So we'll read some of his tweets. So he responded to a CNN article that said Trump allegedly would not leave the White House after a 2020 election. And he said, does this matter? Yes, in the pursuit of justice, which is happening aggressively by most accounts. Untrue with the FBI, but he said, however, do Democrats win more votes by chasing Trump or catering to hopes and fears of those who are disaffected or desperate enough to vote for him? So he's speaking to the mentality of, well, there were lots of Bernie bros that jumped the boat to go vote for Trump because they were concerned about NAFTA, they were concerned about the TPP, offshoring manufacturing, for example, open borders being a Koch brothers proposal to disaffect the American worker of a living wage. And he's saying, well, are you going to demonize these people? Or are you going to appeal to their concerns and actually get them on side? And it's a salient point to maybe don't demonize the 70 million people that voted for you as MAGA Republicans and no longer your countrymen. And he said, when someone responded to him saying the disaffected voter theory had been debunked, he said, "What are you talking about? It's not a theory. It's a reality I witnessed in countless interviews with voters who saw their vote as a rejection of the norm, who knew their guy was deeply flawed, but he was their guy and a rejection of what they also saw as malignant in DC. Andrew Yang says many of his new supporters are former Trump voters. Why didn't Democrats get them? Maybe because you demonize all who voted for him." And so even someone who was a merchant peddling this division seems to be coming around and going, "Well, what have I done? I lost my job. Some of my producers were alleged paedophiles, so perhaps I wasn't throwing in my weight with the right crowd, and now we're losing anyway. So maybe we should get back and appeal to the right standards of fairness and congeniality, because when we go to the general public and say, why don't we trans your kids? It doesn't go down all that well."
The left, they pushed it too far. They've just pushed everything just too far. So now, like, most people who couldn't care less will just, oh, whatever, do what you want. Now they're noticing it, because they're noticing, I'm tangibly noticing, yeah, Trump was inflammatory, but at least I had money in my pocket. Yep. Yeah, I could afford to pay my bills. Now they're noticing, oh, Biden says the nice things, but I can't afford to fill my car up. Kamala Harris says the nice things, but I can't afford to feed my kids.
Well, Kamala Harris barely says anything.
Yeah. We did it, Joe. We did it. We did it. Oh, it's so annoying. We did it, Joe. But, like, yeah, like, even her, most hypocritical. Oh, I love weed. You imprison more black men than anyone else.
For non-violent drug offenses.
Anyone else. The hypocrisy of it. And then you see them all just going, oh, she loves weed and she loves black people and just diversity. It's like she's responsible for causing so many like children and families and breakup and division, which increases crime because she demonized people. And now they sell weed legally in California and other states. And she's like, oh yeah, I love weed. Oh, and she's... So it's like they refuse to do it. But the fact is, they pushed it so far. We will teach trans ideology. We will do this. I consider like trans ideology, LGBTQ, all of that. I consider it now akin to like religion, right? Like
it is a Gnostic religion, believing that you can transport your soul into another body.
Well, it's like this though. Like if you want to get your kid, you'll send your kid to a religious school. You want to go Catholic school, whatever. They go there, they learn about that. But in general, most people don't want other people's ideology put on their kids. Keep all of that out of school. And then if you want it, send them to a specific school or send them there. But 99% of people just want their kids to grow up, flipping good people with a knowledge of maths, knowledge of English, a knowledge of, science, not knowing, I need to know a billion different ZZ pronouns, which make no difference
but
to them.
But not how to file my taxes conveniently, which makes me subservient to the government.
There you go.
Exactly. So, as well, there's Brian Stelter failing upward, unless you count Harvard as a defunct institution, which is increasingly looking like it. He's got a media fellowship to examine threats to democracy. He'll be working at the prestigious Ivy League college through at least the fall semester as Walter Schornstein Media and Democracy Fellow, according to a press release from the university. I'm shocked that he wasn't barred on the grounds of likability, because that was the reason they were barring all of the Asian applicants, weren't they? But it just seems that Harvard isn't very competent and they're just a bit racist. So at least he's a rat sinking from one sinking ship to the other. He's jumped from one to the other. So all of this winning has put the squad on suicide watch. We'll finish with. AOC has spoken in a recent GQ interview that she said, so many people in this country hate women and women of colour. I hold two contradictory things in my mind at the same time. One is just the relentless belief that anything is possible. But she said, but at the same time, my experience here has given me a front row seat to how deeply and unconsciously, as well as consciously, so many people in this country hate women, and they hate women of colour. People ask me questions about the future, and realistically, I can't even tell you if I'm going to be alive in September.
Well, let's check back this time next year and see if she's alive. Pretty certain she will be.
Yeah.
She'll probably have a nice new designer dress saying "Eat the Rich," which costs about 20 grand.
Yeah, written across. Well, it's the crazy eyes that disturb me.
What they call them, senpoku eyes or something. When you see too much of this, and you see when they're just a little bit like, there's a phrase for that. It's called senpoku eyes.
Sounds
or something.
Suspiciously like anime. I'm
it is from anime, but it's how you make someone look crazy, something like that.
But it's also, white men hate women of color. That's fiance right there, white fella.
Oh, well, obviously.
Yeah.
It's funny when you see that all their partners are white.
Same with Don Lemon. Oh, white men are ruining this country. White husband. Great. Wonderful. Anyway, so the Republicans seem to be absolutely demolishing it. So I'm just going to finish with this from G Prime, George Alexopoulos, fantastic writer for those who can't see it. It's a football player catching the ball. He's saying, "My team has paved the way. All I have to do is run to the end zone." And then he buckles it, kneels down and touches the ball and says, "Slow and steady wins the race," as the crowd are just screaming at him to do something. And on his jersey is emblazoned GOP. So Republicans, you've got a pretty clear way to the end zone at the moment. Biden is screwing the entire country and looking like some kind of Satan worshipper on camera. The Democrats are so crying that they're making up reality, or actually saying, "We think we're going to die," so they're putting themselves on death watch. So don't screw up, follow through with some of your legislation, pander to the populist base, and, I don't know, actually do something for once.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the Contemplation series, this one on sneaky journalists and their rhetorical tricks. You want to follow what else Josh is putting out? You can follow him on Getter at Josh_firm on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.